January 25th, 2025. Well, I guess the Trump adventure is now well underway, huh? We'll call it, I mean, he certainly hit the ground running here in the last few days, 4 and 5 days roughly. I guess it is now, and well, at least we got Pete Hegseth through as Secretary of Defense on a 50-50 vote, with Vance breaking the tie. So, and I don't know. I guess everybody's gonna be upset about McConnell not voting for him, but I wonder McConnell might have voted for him if they needed his vote. That's hard to know, but he did vote for him on the filibuster in debate. Of course, maybe that's just he wanted to get on with it and get it over with, huh? I don't know. Yeah, he may be a bit of an issue, I think, going forward because of the ongoing uh, disputes and so forth. And of course, we've got you know Marco Rubio in as Secretary of State, and he's already cut back on a lot of foreign aid for the moment until we reevaluate where it's going. That's going to have a lot of people upset in foreign countries, at least. And then we have see, I guess also we have the CIA director Radcliffe is now in, and I think that's a good one there. So um, matters to see what happens on the UAP topic there. I mean, I know Trump has signed an executive order to release the remaining files on JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. And they'll see what's really in that and whether there's any deep mysteries or not. Even if I don't believe that. It'd be interesting to see what actually is in there. I mean, certainly, if I don't think you're going to see an actual description of a government conspiracy against these people in these files, because I don't think they'd be stupid enough to write it down and keep the paperwork, so to speak. If they were going to do something that illegal, they would just be word of mouth kind of stuff. So, anyway, so, but in fact, I think on the JFK stuff, a lot of the suspicion is that it's really going to be about the deal that the CIA ordered this lady that worked in the Russian embassy in Mexico City to be tortured to get information about what kind of contact she might have had with Oswald and so forth. That's generally what I think we're looking at there. But other than that, there's about 200 or so executive orders. The big one I think that I see, the big order is the one on the birthright citizenship, and that's the one that's going to be the most troublesome because I mean you have well the whole history of that is something that's pretty obscure to me. As I understand it, we know that originally the 14th Amendment didn't really apply to every human being that was born in the United States, because at the time there were many indigenous peoples, otherwise known as Native Americans, or in the old days Indians, inappropriately, who were being born here and weren't considered citizens after the 14th Amendment was passed. And so it was mainly to apply to freed slaves in order to give them voting rights in the South, which were then suppressed with some clever things called what do you call them, literacy tests and stuff like that, and poll taxes and stuff of that sort, which were only overturned during the 1960s civil rights era actions. So, legislation, I think a constitutional amendment also was in that, the poll tax. But the point is, I'm saying that was what this was about. And so we'll see how things go. I mean, it's not going to be an easy road. And the thing that you have to get to, there are some exceptions. The Native Americans that was only changed in the 1920s, and there was a Supreme Court decision in the 1890s about an Asian that was born here. So I don't know when it became general to simply anybody that was here illegally that had the child was immediately become a citizen. I'm thinking maybe under FDR in the 30s. That's something I'm not sure about. And there's a whole history of litigation there. There's a variety of legal principles involved. So it's going to be a tricky thing. It's going to have to go to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court can rule in our favor, or they can rule against us. And that's a good question. What are they going to do? I would, in a way, want to slow walk this a little bit because we need to build up a lot of legal argumentation about it. I think that a lot of it, in a way, I think we may be hitting the court just a little too fast. And hopefully that'll drag out over some time. Because, I mean, let's look at some other controversial things in the past which I think will, make this a little bit more clear cut. And that is well, for instance, the abortion issue. You have the Roe v. Wade decision, and then you have the Dobbs decision that counteracted it. And those were, about 50 years apart, I guess it was. So, I mean, so you do have cases where a precedent set. So even if we consider the precedent of the 1890s to be meaningful, the court could reverse that. And the argument for it would be that the situation just so totally changed that in those days we were looking for more immigrants. We were looking for more people, really. And we weren't, and we didn't have all the procedures in place. It wasn't immigration wasn't quite done the same way back then as it's done now. Laws have changed over the years and processes have changed. So we could argue that. And another example, even this day, that the children of foreign diplomats, for example, that are born in the United States, even though they're born here, and most of them, I presume, are not born in the embassy proper. I mean, and because if they're in the embassy proper, that is generally considered under international law foreign territory. So, but they're probably born in American hospitals, and when they're born here, and so they're not on foreign territory of any definition, and yet they're not considered to be native-born citizens. So there are examples where that isn't the case, and so it really is up to how the court wants to handle it, and we can hope for the best. But I think there's other decisions which I can think of. The three big ones was abortion, the sodomy law decisions of '86 and 2003, I guess it was, and of course the gay marriage decision. So big decisions like this have been made, and they sometimes reduce other long-standing precedents. So we can hope this court has the courage to come up with the right decision on it. But it'll be some work here, and we got to go through the district courts and the appellate courts first. I don't think they're going to jump on it real quick for a variety of perceptual reasons, if nothing else. If you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. And you can also follow me on Rumble, and it's listed in the description below, the name to search for on Rumble. So yeah, so that's one of the major areas that we're at, and there's of course a whole bunch of other things. Ending a DEI is a big one, of course. That's another big one, and I think that one he can pretty much do because it was pretty much put in place by executive order, so it can probably be ended by executive order. And there's a lot of things like that. He's now this ongoing battle to get Greenland. I don't know where that's going. I think that's really kind of unnecessary. I mean, we don't actually have to bring it into the United States to exploit resources there. I think we could make a deal there. At any rate, the other question is, what price would Denmark really want for it, and would Congress be willing to appropriate the money for it when we consider all the other issues we got to deal with trying to get the tax cuts in place? I mean, that's going to increase the theoretical deficit based on the current 10-year plan or whatever. In reality, I mean, essentially it would be continuing mostly what the tax rates are now, but the current plan incorporates the idea that the rates will actually go up at the end of this year, and we really don't want that to happen. Then there's some other things to get it passed. We'll definitely have to bring back some increase the salt caps to some level to appease our Republicans from California and New York and maybe Illinois or something, because particularly those two states, and that's going to be an issue. And then of course all the big promises Trump made on the one I don't see the one on overtime at all. I mean, in my opinion, the overtime workers often want to work overtime, and I think having them to do it tax free is just going to create more gold bricking, basically, in my opinion. There are occasions where people are forced to work overtime and under a lot of stress, I agree, but there's also a lot of times where in the organizations I've been in, there were certain people that just wanted the overtime to get more money. And not really because they couldn't get the work done in the 40 hours. It depends on, and I'll probably get some people angry for saying that, but and of course, the Social Security thing. Well, again, I don't think you're going to make Social Security totally tax free for everybody. I don't see that's reasonable, really. But I think it would be reasonable to up the thresholds where it becomes taxable, because right now those were set back. The original numbers were set back, I think, in the 80s, and then it was increased. The amount was increased in the 93 by Clinton. So, I think you could up those things to adjust for inflation, and that would be a good thing. But the idea to completely eliminate it and let people, regardless of how much they make, not pay on it, like let's say they're making $1 million a year on investments or something, and but they have Social Security becomes tax free, and that doesn't make a lot of sense. So, but we'll see what they decide to do. I think it'll be something more moderate than that. I think even on tips, I think that should be capped at some level, so that people working at diners and that sort of thing, restaurants and all, middle class kind of restaurants, whatever, they would be not be paying tax on it. But if you're really making at some elite hotel and you're making six figures on tips, I mean, maybe that shouldn't be tax free. So anyway, that's just my thoughts. But anyway, we'll see how he incorporates that into his issue. The other issue is, of course, his Davos speech, which was very interesting when he called out Bank of America. But remember, this whole plan of tariffing the entire world, I'm like, partly I think he's into this because he simply needs the revenue to pay for his tax cuts, if you want to call it paying for them. In other words, to offset the budget deficit that the tax cuts would create against the baseline plan, then the tariffs would bring in money. On the other hand, the problem is two can play at that game. We don't know if everybody's going to just say, okay, our stuff gets tariffed, but your stuff doesn't, because there's very few of these cases where it's an overwhelming one-way trade. In many of these cases, I keep talking about Canada, but the net deficit is only $65 billion. And basically, there's what, the 250 or whatever billion you saw, but that's the total trade number. Well, they could just put a tariff back on our stuff, and then we could put a counter tariff on their stuff, and then, well, when it's all over with, we wouldn't even be trading with each other anymore because it'd be too expensive to. So I mean, I don't know. Is that what we really want? I don't get where he's going on that. The Mexico, I understand. With China, I understand. That's a different thing. But just across the board, if in fact it's reciprocal, like for instance, if Germany, I don't know do they have a tariff on our cars, or just they don't buy them because they don't like them? Okay, if they have a tariff, then there's nothing wrong with putting a counter tariff on, and then use as a negotiation ploy. But that doesn't seem to be the direction they're going. They're going more into it's just a revenue technique. Well, that falls into exactly what he was being criticized for in the election. All right, that is, it's basically a hidden tax. It isn't really exactly a sales tax, but it's effectively the same kind of thing. It's also inflationary, and then he's also got this, wants to demand that the Fed reduce interest rates. Well, that can also be inflationary. So we'll see where he's going with that one, but there's a lot else going on, and I know he's out there dealing with the fire in California and the flood in North Carolina, so maybe he can do something on that issue. And I guess partly he sees that's a lever to the Democrats to get more support for his plan. That is, they'll try to include that in the big budget. And well, anyway, so that's kind of what I'm seeing here. I mean, that's overall, I'm positive about what he's doing on most of the big issues. I don't have any problem with pardoning the January 6th people, because I don't think they got a fair trial. I think that's the basic thing, and most of them were overcharged, and the ones that really are guilty were also over-sentenced for what they did compared to what other people did that did similar acts, particularly in protest situations involving liberals. All the George Floyd riots and the things out in Seattle, all that stuff. I mean, those people are really given very light treatment, and yet these people are supposed to be, treated like they're a major insurrectionist or something, which is just nonsense. So he's got that done, and also it's out of the way pretty much. He may have a few fights with some recalcitrant judges, but I think they can be quashed pretty quickly too. So anyway, that's kind of the way I see it. The adventure's on, and we'll see what he does next. It'll be exciting, I'm sure. It won't be boring. He's not a boring president. He's an exciting one. So, at any rate, and we'll see if we can get more of the cabinet people through. If the Democrats are going to obstruct forever or not. At some point, I do agree that just doing a recess appointment would be probably the way to deal with it if they just keep acting like jerks about this. So, at any rate, I mean, there's a few people they specifically don't like, but if they just do this on every appointment, then I think it's time to do some maneuver to overpower them. So, at any rate, so I'll be posting this on Rumble and YouTube as always, and we'll and of course the address of my social media accounts are in the description below.